Clay Christensen had this really cool memo I read of his where he talked about having a vision of one of his leaders having a really bad day at work, like feeling unfulfilled, feeling like she wasn't challenged. And she goes home and she's snappy with her kids and not the best mother to her children. And cut back to that same woman having a great day at work, feeling fulfilled, feeling like she's intellectually challenged and stimulated. And so she goes home and is excited to be home and not being weighed down with all of the trial at work. And leaders can't fix everything, certainly not, but you have a really big impact on the people you lead.
Welcome to the CEOpeek show, where we uncover the essence of extraordinary leadership by interviewing CEOs with over 90% approval ratings on Glassdoor. Hello and welcome to another episode of the CEOpeek. I am so happy to have Jordan Smith, the CEO of Developmental, with us today. Hi, Jordan. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Also, we just checked in for a few moments to deal with technology, and then I got excited about that conversation with you. And beside the fact that you are calling from Utah, and we talked a little bit about skiing, and now it's snowing there in Utah, so I'm so jealous.
Yes, yeah, we're getting excited to hit the slopes.
Yes, me too. But it's too far from California where I'm. Yeah. I'm really curious about what is that. We started to talk about leadership before we hit the record button, and you started to talk about mission. So I'm really curious about mission and values. What is that for you, and how does it play into your leadership at the company?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for me personally, I think mission and values as a founder and as a leader, I personally am motivated by a few things at work. The first is that I believe in what I'm doing. Like for example, probably would not be a great, vacuum salesman, right? That's the old stereotype people use, but it's just not something that excites me or a product that I am super excited about or believe in. I get excited about working with people that I really respect and that challenge me and that are talented. And then I really enjoy working somewhere where I feel like I have a big impact and where maybe I don't know if big fish in a small pond is the right way to say it, but just I feel like I have a big impact, right? Like working for a really large company with lots of bureaucracy would be really hard for me personally, because I feel like it would be hard for me to feel like I'm having a major impact. And so at Jet Dental, my company, we do pop-up dental clinics for workplaces across the country. So the people we see typically have not been to the dentist in over 2 years. And so one of the things I think I love about Jet Dental and what we're doing, our mission is we make it easy to have great oral health with Fanatical customer care. And so by bringing the dentist to people's workplaces, we make it easy for people to sign up and to do what they probably know they should do. Estimates say that up to 40% of people with dental insurance don't go to the dentist even annually. And so by making it easy, we get those people to probably say to themselves, well, gosh, if I don't go now, I'm never going to go. I really should sign up and do what I know I'm supposed to do, which is get checked in on twice a year with the dentist. And so I think that's really compelling for our team members who work for us. Most people who get into dentistry, they want to help people. And the way they're helping people is through their oral health, right? And helping them stay healthy. And so at Jet, we're able to help the people who need it most. And I think that's a really compelling thing for the people who work for us. It's fun and rewarding when you're helping patients who otherwise aren't going to the dentist and otherwise aren't getting help. And so that's our mission. And I think it makes my job as a leader a lot easier when we have a really clear, compelling mission, because it's something we can just come back to time and time again and say, hey, does this thing that we're trying to do or this initiative or this product, does it align with our mission? Is it making it easier for people to have great oral health? And does it align with our value of providing Fanatical customer care? I'm getting kind of long-winded here. You asked one other thing, which is our values. And at Jet Dental, our values are what we stand FOR. So it's Fanatical Care, One Team, and Relentless. And I could talk about each of those in more detail, but I think we do a good job at our company of being very intentional about hiring for those values. We hold people accountable to those values. We reward and incentivize based on those values. And I think we're certainly not perfect. No company is. But I think we do a good job of having a strong culture because we're really clear about what we believe in and what values are important to us internally. And I think when you have a good value system and a strong culture, when people in the organization start to enforce that structure, right? Where they say, hey, this is what we believe in, and they hold their own team members accountable by saying, hey, yeah, that's not what we believe in, and you need to shape up, basically, right? It doesn't always have to come from the managers. When internal team members hold their peers accountable to what we believe in, I think that's when you know you have a strong value set.
So, it's interesting because I meet a lot of CEOs that say, hey, this is the company values. Then I go and talk to people at the third tier and they have even no clue what the company values are. So how do you know that actually that trickle down to all employees?
Well, I think there's some really simple tactical things we do. Whenever we start a meeting, the leaders in our organization, they start by saying, hey, who wants to give us the company mission? Who wants to say a value? Who else wants to say a value? And sometimes we'll even we use a system called Motivosity, which is a peer recognition system. And we'll even throw somebody a Motivosity buck when they get it right. Also within Motivosity, you can award other team members based on your values. And so you can recognize someone for a specific value and say why they emulated, for example, Fanatical Care or One Team or Relentless in our organization. So I think some very practical things like that. We do a monthly award for the Fanatical Care person of the month of whatever, and the One Team person for the month of November. We just barely did. So I think there's specific things like that you can do that are a little bit more on a tactical level. But then on a leadership standpoint, I think as you're having one-on-ones with team members, we train our leaders to talk about that, right? To talk about the values and to identify if we feel there's misalignment with the values. And so you just have to repeat it. You have to talk about it a lot. You have to make it part of your incentive structure. You have to make it part of your meeting structure for people to really, I think, get it and for it to resonate with the team members. And so I love seeing people within the organization recognizing their peers for specific values and talking about what that value meant to them. So to me, that's really cool to see and really rewarding.
Yeah. I wonder what made it so important for you, because look, a lot of people, even when you read the news about famous CEOs, they don't speak publicly about their values. So something actually in your life or in your career made that very important for you. Even you wanted to start about it. And I appreciate also that you bring it to life in organization, because it's like really sometimes it's on a company website, but to bring it to life, it's like what you're doing, reward and hold accountable people that actually don't follow through the values. So, but I wonder what made it so important for you.
A couple of things come to mind. First of all, before I started Jet Dental, I worked at a couple other organizations where they had a really strong value set and they did a really good job, I think, as an organization of being really clear about what their values were, what those values meant. They did similar things we do at Jet Dental now, where they had awards and structure in place to help reinforce the values, to hire intentionally based on the values. And so I certainly learned from them and was inspired by that. I think the other thing that comes to mind is it's easy to have a strong culture when there's 10 of you because you all see each other and you there's some unspoken rules about what you believe in and you kind of get it. But as you grow as an organization, that gets really hard as you keep adding people. And we're to the point in the size now where I don't know every employee at Jet Dental. I haven't met most of them, that are working with us across the country. And so you have to be really intentional about those values and what they mean, because as you scale, it gets harder. And so you have to be very intentional, put forth effort into what the values are if you want to keep that culture the same as it grows. That's one of the harder things to do. When you're a small startup, there's just naturally a lot of fun energy and culture that's developed because there's only so many of you and you feel like you're trying to change the world, and that's exciting. But as you grow and as you develop and mature as an organization, again, have to be very intentional about that if you want to keep that kind of energy going. And so I think for me, I'm not from dental, for example. So I'm not a dentist. I didn't have a career in dentistry before this. My career is primarily in sales. And so if you ask me, am I passionate about dental? I am now, but I probably wasn't when I first started the company necessarily, but I'm passionate about improving the customer experience. I'm passionate about fanatical care, we call it, where, that word fanatical kind of implies you're maybe just a little bit crazy about providing good customer service and you're a fan of your customers and your partners. And so to me, that's probably where the value system stemmed from for Jet Dental specifically. Is I'm not a dental expert. I've learned a lot since starting this company, but I am passionate about trying to deliver and improve the customer experience. And so what Jet does is perhaps improve the customer experience a little bit from where traditional dentistry was. It's hard to take time off of work, drive and be stuck in traffic, sit in a waiting room, see the dentist, come back. That may be 2 to 3 hours off of work for some people. And we make it easy. We put it in your conference room. You can go be seen, get back to your desk in 45 minutes. We make it easy for you to do something that is important for your health and that you probably know you should do, but you put off. And so to me, that's probably where that stemmed for our values specifically at Jet Dental. But I think, again, having really clear values is important. I think it also helps your team know what matters to you, and it helps them kind of opt in or opt out on their own. Like they may read your values and go, it's not for me. That's not really who I am. That's not what I believe in. And it allows them to decide whether they align or not.
Yeah. Did you ever feel that you pay the price for a value that you hold dearly?
Yeah, I think certainly I spoke with just a shout out to Scott Johnson. He's the CEO of Motivosity and had very successful companies prior to that as well. But he said something very similar to you just said. He said, you've got to be willing to put your money where your mouth is, right? Like your values may need to cost you something. For us, Fanatical Care is probably the one I see most often that has a cost. For example, we had an event where our team member on the way to the event was probably 3 hours away from their locations. It was a bit of a travel event. The van broke down. The van just carries all the equipment, and then we set up in like a spare conference room or training room with the company. But the van broke down. And it would have been really easy for that team member to just go, hey, van broke down. Sorry, we're going to have to cancel the event. But because she believed in Fanatical Care, she went and on her own rented a U-Haul and moved everything over, took the U-Haul, took it to the client. And realistically, that costs us a lot of money. And I don't know if we made money on the event necessarily, but like it was a phenomenal example to me of someone taking initiative because they believed in Fanatical Care, because we didn't want to leave those patients high and dry, because we had a commitment to that client. And there's a lot of other stories, a myriad of stories I could share where Fanatical Care has actually physically cost us something, or where we've screwed up and we send gift cards to people because we felt like we made a mistake. But I think long term, it pays for itself. I think our value of Relentless, sometimes that means there's some long work days, a lot of hard earned hours. But I do think we try to work hard, play hard. And so there's times at Jet Dental where we have a lot of downtime. The holidays coming up is a lot of downtime for us. And I think we really try to encourage our team to get that rest and relaxation during that downtime, because there are going to be also longer work days. And so I think being really clear about that's important though. When we hire office managers, for example, our vice president of operations, I'm joking a little bit, but he almost is kind of trying to scare that person out of the job a little bit. Like, hey, here's how much you're going to have to travel. And here's what these work days might look like. And here's things that could happen. He's almost trying to test, like, are you actually relentless? Like, are you actually going to put forth the work? Do you actually want to do this? Because there are certainly hard, long working days. There's also a lot of rewarding experiences. And I think we pay well in our industry. And so those are some of the trade-offs.
Yeah. I remember I used to do the same, kind of have difficult interviews in which I'm actually almost try to convince them not to come to. Yeah, because we try to beautify the company before they join, and then they see that it's never the same, right? And many people join companies that were great after that because everything was sugar-coated with like beautiful gift, right? So I'm curious about when a lot of the values I see coming to the business, and what is when you look from just leadership standpoint, purely, what is your number one value?
I would say from a leadership standpoint at Jet Dental, I do think that Fanatical Care is our number one. It just encompasses a lot of what we're trying to do, ensuring that we're providing great customer service for the patient, ensuring that we're putting the customer first, that we're providing the client with a great experience. I think that's the number one thing we look for. I think there's some Relentless already kind of built in there when you think about Fanatical Care, like it's someone who's willing to go the extra mile to ensure that a client has a good experience, that a patient has a good experience. And so in our organization, I think that's the number one value. I think when you look at our leaders across the board, I feel very confident and can say, yeah, these are people who exemplify Fanatical Care. They're willing to go the extra mile, which is also part of our Relentless value, to ensure that they execute, that they hold themselves and their team to a high standard. And so for me, that's the most important thing. I think outside of the Jet Dental values, outside of what we say are our stated values, I do think that good leaders are humble, hungry, and smart. They're people you can trust. You can trust their competence. They're good at what they do, but you can also trust their character. You can trust that they will do the right thing and they'll work hard. And so I think outside of Jet Dental's values, that's something that certainly I ask myself is, can I trust this person? Can I trust that they're good at their job and they know what they're doing? Competence. And can I trust their character? They have integrity. They're going to work hard. For example, Dave, we don't know each other super well, but I might think you're a great guy and very honest, but I wouldn't trust you to do my implant, right? Or to do my crown, my dental crown, because you're not a dentist. Like that's not your competence, right? And having both matters. And so at work, the best team members, the best leaders are people who are good at their job and they continue to improve at their job, but they also have a good character and they try to do what's right and they work hard. And so those are, I think, important values generally in any organization.
Yeah, I'm sure I can do your dental. I have good hands. I'm handyman.
Yeah, I see the guitars in the background. I'm sure you could figure it out. Yeah.
And look, for example, when I think about values, how those shows up in a relationship, what fanatical care means when it comes to the relationship among the leadership team.
I think generally one team is the value that sort of inter-department wise we talk about more, but I think fanatical care, the root of fanatical, if you say fan, is kind of like, hey, you're a fan of that person. You want to see them succeed, right? And so I think a really good leader, they want to ensure that everyone else around them has success. They're not afraid of hiring somebody who might be better at that job than they themselves are because they want the organization and everyone around them to have success. So I think in our executive team specifically, the leadership team, I think one thing that we're really good at is we trust each other to the point where we're not afraid of conflict and we're not afraid to say things that may ruffle feathers. I think we've developed enough of a relationship where we can, I don't want to say be contentious, but we can argue over trying to figure out the truth, right? Like we can argue over trying to figure out the best solution to a problem. And if we cross a line, we know to say, hey, I'm sorry, I got maybe personal there and I crossed the line, forgive me, right? And we can kind of back out of that. And by the way, my team's actually doesn't cross the line very often. I'm the one who usually crosses the line and I'm the one that needs to ask for forgiveness more than they do. But I think we can passionately debate things. And I think that's really important for any team, but especially a leadership team, especially an executive team. You need to be able to feel like you're getting the whole truth from your team. You've explored every avenue. And then the goal of the leader is just to be the decision maker and to help hold themselves and the organization accountable to that decision, right? And so being able to say, hey, I've heard everyone's opinions. Here's what I think we need to go. And a great team, here's the direction I think we need to go. And a great team rallies around that. And they know, hey, they had their opportunity to discuss it. And there's no meeting after the meeting like, oh, I wish that idiot made such a bad call. It's like, well, I have my opportunity to say what I think needed to happen. And this is the direction we're going. And as a leader, you need to be prepared to hold yourself accountable to that decision, if it's whether it's right or wrong, and then pivot from there.
How do you know that they tell you that you have the whole truth? You mentioned that they really confront. Did you have people that confront, especially? And I think that the last interview was another founder CEO, and you're a founder too, right?
Yeah.
There's a sense of ownership that most people want to challenge the founder CEO because of the power dynamics, right? So how do you ensure actually that you really get the whole truth and people really speak out, even especially when they feel that you're very decisive and you have a strong conviction like most founders have?
Well, I think that's an area where as a leader, you do have to be careful. And what I mean by that is, and it's something I need to work on specifically, but you can't overreact to negative feedback or negative instances or results, because you do want people to be able to feel comfortable sharing in a meeting. I think a good tactical way to figure this out too is to do drop downs or level downs where, you're interviewing someone 2 or 3 levels below you directly and asking them questions and asking them feedback. And the goal of that meeting is not to try to solve their problem right there. It's literally just to get their feedback and then you come back later. And that takes restraint. I think also in meetings, soliciting feedback directly. Hey, we haven't heard from you much today. Can you share your thoughts on this, right? Like just be very specific about asking for that feedback and try not to react. Try to let everybody else speak first before you jump in. It takes restraint and it's hard. And I will be the first to admit this is not necessarily a strong suit of mine, but I'm working on it. But it takes groundwork. You're not going to make someone feel comfortable right away. You got to build that relationship. For your direct team members, that's regular one-on-ones. That's regularly sitting with them and building that relationship and caring about them outside of work, but in addition to work. And so it does take time. And I think you just have to be really intentional about gathering feedback from your team and making sure that they feel like when they bring you feedback, you care about it and you're going to do something about it. And there's not going to be a negative ramification for them if they bring that to the table. And so it just takes work. And, You have to keep doing it. Level downs can help certainly, but I think over time you'll get a feel for it. In meetings you can tell when people are opening, and you can tell when people just crickets and they're not saying things, and you need to work on that relationship.
So what is one thing that your team will, watching this episode, will learn about you that they have no clue and they never heard about you? One thing that nobody in the company knows about you.
Nobody in the company knows about me. Let's see. I'm pretty open. So there's probably at least someone who knows some of these things. Okay. I have maybe two things. Well, I'll just say one main thing. I'm a decent beatboxer. Or you with your mouth make the sound. I can do that pretty well. I don't want to do it on your podcast, but I'm actually not half bad at it. I don't. Anyway, that's a weird thing about me that I bet not most people in my organization know. I'm not necessarily proud of that fact. That's just I'm okay at it.
Yeah. So you mentioned something, that it's still work in progress. What is your developmental edge right now? What are you very curious about yourself? Besides, in the context of the business, there's so much change in the world. And what are you curious that you feel like, hey, there's a gap here that I'm working on? What is that?
Yeah. Would you say like specifically for my development or for the business's development?
Yeah. For your development as a leader, as a CEO, what is next for you as a leader?
For me, the thing that was the most challenging as a CEO and founder compared to previous roles where I was the vice president of sales, like I had one business function that I managed, it's been harder for me to give the right amount of resources to every department. And I find myself floating in and out of maybe a month where I'm like really dedicated to sales, and then a month where I'm really dedicated more to recruiting. And I kind of find myself struggling to find balance to provide personal resources and guidance to the right team members. So I know for me personally, when I think about our company and the evolution we need and how I can help as a leader, I think doing a better job each week of gaining clarity really early in the week of where I'm needed. I think that's something that I can work on and want to improve. And so based on the leaderboards we have, getting really clear about, okay, this is the area that needs the most help from me right now. And I think that's something that I can improve and where I'm looking to continue to evolve as a leader.
And how you develop leaders in organization? What are you doing personally or beyond that to develop the edge of continuously developing leaders to grow the business and beyond, just become a better organization?
Yeah, this is something that we've really recently as an organization tried to invest more in. I think we all, meaning our executive team, felt that we were making all the decisions and kind of doing everything strategically. And that doesn't mean our team wasn't working hard or executing, just we were bottling up too many decisions had to be made by one of us. And we felt like we needed to start enabling and trusting our leaders to make more decisions and to be more of a strategic partner and leader in the business. And so that's something that we've been trying to expand now. A couple tactical things we're doing specifically. In addition to our individual executive meeting, before that, we have an extended leadership meeting where we have director level and above going through our reporting and our leaderboards and talking about the most important thing they're going to work on and prioritize that week. And so we get a quick, good, in an hour sense of where each leader's at in the business, where they're spending the majority of the time, what they're prioritizing. I think back to that conversation we had earlier about getting people to participate. That's something we're trying to train them and work with them on. Like, hey, speak up, make sure you're participating in this meeting, that your thoughts and ideas are being heard. And so that's a good weekly opportunity for us as a leadership team to help train and coach them. We encourage all of our leaders to have weekly one-on-ones. I think that's a really helpful way that our executive team coaches their leaders to be better and so on and so forth down through the organization. And then we've invested in a software called Trainual. That's a learning management system where we can do trainings virtually with team members. And then investing in actual summits. So in January, we're going to do a summit with our operations leaders, flying them out, actually spending time with them for an entire day, just entirely focused on leadership principles and execution things we want to accomplish in that coming quarter or year. So I think it takes time, it takes investment, but one thing that we're evolving is trying to involve those leaders we want to build more in the decision-making process on a weekly basis.
You mentioned earlier culture. I'd like to circle back to that. What is that for you? And What is the sense of culture, how you develop culture, how important is it for you?
Yeah, I think culture is incredibly important. I think it's hard to perfectly define, but to me, it's like the vibe, it's the feeling of the organization, it's the thoughts and feelings and beliefs that embody what that organization is about, right? And so you can have an external perception of what your culture is all about, but to me, what we're talking about here is the internal perception, right? How do your team members feel about one another? How do they feel about the organization? How do they feel about their leader? And I do think that the most important thing you can do in an organization to have a strong, positive culture is to have great leaders. It's by far and away the most important thing you can do. And there's lots of studies that suggest that, right? That one of the number one reasons people will leave their job is that they hate their direct supervisor or they really dislike their direct supervisor. And no organization is perfect at this, but you need to continually try to find great people to be leaders. I love Jim Collins' leadership concept of the level 5 leader who is personally humble, but in a work sense is very ambitious. Like they're very hardworking, they're very hungry, they're very diligent, but they're personally humble individuals and people you can get along with, and they genuinely like each other. They don't have a major ego that they need to constantly boost. And so I think that's an important thing to look for in the leaders, but you have to have great leaders to help enforce that culture, to help hold people accountable. For example, relentless means we do need to work hard. We do need to execute. And if you have a leader who doesn't want to hold people accountable to those things, just like, oh, hey, good job, buddy. You tried. Like, you do need to have some hard conversations with people from time to time. And you do need to hold people accountable to the culture. For example, if you have one team member who is not at all carrying their weight, right? They're slacking off and every other teammate knows it, and you don't take action and you don't help that person improve or try to coach them, maybe eventually that needs to be their dismissal from the organization. If you don't take any action, that sends a really clear message to the rest of the team, like, yeah, this isn't really important to us. Like, it's not really something that we value. And so that's something I think people don't think about with culture. Like, people want to talk about like, oh yeah, we got like a ping pong table and we do these fun things all the time. And like, that's fun. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not culture. Culture is being really clear about what you value, what's important to you, and aligning that with the goals of the organization, right? It is a business at the end of the day. You do have to produce. You do have to have a profit for your shareholders. And so you need to make sure that you're doing a good job there. But I think there's that virtuous cycle of, if we do a good job of caring for our employees, they will do a good job of caring for in our case, the patient or the member, the customer, and the customer will reward you with dollars, with revenue, with profit, right? And so that's that virtuous cycle. And so if you want to start with, hey, making sure you do a great job for the employee, you set up a system where you say, hey, here's what we believe, here's the values, here's how we're going to reward you, here's the things we tolerate, here's the things we don't tolerate. And you try to help people build belief in that. And then hopefully it continues to reinforce itself as you have great leaders.
Yeah. When you mentioned earlier the hard conversations, I see usually this is where culture really hits the road, and because this is where you can really feel the culture. So let's double click on that. How do you handle tough conversation? Do you really have tough conversation in organization, not just between you and your direct report, but across the organization? What is your sense of that?
I think as an organization, we are pretty good about being transparent about where we're at and what we've accomplished, where we're disappointed when we've missed goals. And one thing I do is, it's mostly monthly, but occasionally bi-weekly, I do a video for the entire organization to watch where I just talk about where we're at with our goals and high level, hey, here's the goals we hit, here's the goals we missed, and where we're disappointed and we'd like to improve and fix. And so we don't shy away from, when we miss a goal, talking about that and being open as an organization about what we're going to do to try to improve that. I think on team level and individual levels, leaders have to set clear expectations and then hold people accountable to those expectations. It's really important. And that doesn't mean you're always getting mad at people. You just try to understand what's going on, right? So they may have had the best intent and everybody worked really hard and you missed the goal. Okay, what happened? What do you think is the issue here? Let's try to solve that together. It's not, let's spend hours and hours going into all the mistakes that were made. That's not the point. It's just like, let's try to work on this and improve this. I'd like to be future focused and forward focused. How are we going to fix this and prevent this from happening again? Or how are we going to hit it this time? And so it's not always necessarily a negative thing when you say hold accountable, right? It just means you're talking about it every week and they know it's important to you and you're identifying that. Now, there are times where individuals are making poor choices and they are not working hard or they are not following through on things. And that's where you may need to have a harder conversation where you say, hey, like, this is what I expected. You said you would do this. You didn't follow through. eventually that could lead to a performance improvement plan. My view on a performance improvement plan, you should actually want that person to pass and succeed. Otherwise, don't even do it. Just move straight to dismissal if you just feel like it's not a good fit. That's my personal view. I think HR people hate that, but that's my personal opinion. Is like, if you're going to do a performance improvement plan, you should want that person to succeed. And in the performance improvement plan should be, here's what I'm going to do as the leader to help you succeed. I'm going to check in with you twice a week on this, that, or the other as we're trying to work through this over the next month, right? But if there's just a really clear, it's not a good fit, they just don't believe the same things we believe as an organization, I think just having that candid conversation and moving on is appropriate as well. But yeah, I think that's to me what having hard conversations and holding people accountable means. You shouldn't shy away from the non-rah-rah stuff. Like, you should be open about when you've missed, how you're going to improve too.
Yeah. I work with a leader that, we need to put him on a performance improvement plan. Deep inside, he knew that there was no chance. And 3 months down the road, they needed to, but they wasted 3 months that this time they could already onboard a new leader and just trying to fix something that is not fixable, or sometimes they don't want to change, right? It's a feeling like if somebody really wants to change, you can sense that somebody is really making the effort, unless they're totally incapable and it was a mistaken recruitment.
Yeah.
Right?
Going back to that character competence trust earlier, I spoke about when they have strong character trust, but the competence is not quite there. Those are the people where you feel like you can be a little bit more patient with. Like, I think they can figure this out. They've got a lot of good qualities. We just got to help them develop here in this area of executing, right, what we're trying to do. The ones where they're confident, but there's just not a lot of character trust there, they're being lazy, like, those are the ones where it's like, it's hard to have patience. It's hard to feel like you want, like you said, they don't seem to want to change. Why waste each other's time? If you're worried about being fair to them, give them generous severance and move on. Like, there's no reason to waste each other's time when you could be moving on as an organization and they could be moving on and finding something that's a better fit for them. So I totally agree with that. If you feel like there's a way for them to get there, awesome. Invest that time, really train them. Because if it's a bad hire, it's your fault as a leader one way or the other. Either you hired the wrong person, right? Or you didn't do enough training to help them develop. And so you got to take some ownership to try to make it work, or to, say, hey, listen, that's my bad. I think I made a bad hire here. This just isn't a good fit, and move on.
I don't know. I don't think that many people are lazy. So when somebody shows up lazy, it's probably just a symptom to a deeper problem, that they are not committed, actually, right? What does it mean? You mentioned not following through, and not something holds being fully committed. Maybe misalignment in purpose or values, as you mentioned, or they're not in the right place and right time. So, because how can you challenge laziness? You need to go to beyond the symptom. It's like you're going to a doctor and you just try to solve the laziness. Well, what's the source of that, right? It's lack of commitment to something. And this is what I call really tough conversation, because it's not on the surface. You need to go really deep and have that capacity to have a real conversation with a human being. How does it land for you?
Yeah, I think that's somewhat true. To be honest, I think I have met people where it was just a bad hire right away, and you kind of know it, and they're exemplifying some pretty poor behavior. I think what we've been talking about, where you're talking with leaders, I totally agree with that concept that, like, if you see a sudden shift in a leader, someone you've trusted previously, you've gotten to this point, there's definitely underlying issues. And not to say that there's not that happening with maybe a frontline person, but I definitely have had some experience where we just made a bad hire and it became self-evident really quickly. And by the way, moving on from that person was a huge bump in the morale to the rest of the team who is working their butt off, right? That they recognize, like, hey, we recognize that was a bad fit and we moved on. And I've seen that happen a lot. But I agree with what you're saying. I had a conversation not all that long ago with a team member where it felt like their performance had slid. I could tell they were a bit disgruntled about some things. And my approach, how effective it was or not, I don't know, we'll see. But my approach was, hey, I just feel like there's a little bit of a rift here, and we have a one-on-one in a couple of days, and I'd love to just chat with you about that. Like, I'd love for you just to think about what is causing this rift. Like, if I can tell you're a little bit dissatisfied, I can tell that there's been a change in your level of output and your performance, and I'd love to just hear from you. I just want to listen to you. I just want to hear from you what it is that's causing that friction, because I believe in you. I believe you're talented, and I'd like to see if we can align again on that. Feels like we're just a little bit misaligned, and I'd like to see if we can get back to that. And I thought it was a really helpful conversation, and this individual brought up several thoughts and feelings that they've been experiencing. And I think we were able to kind of agree on how we would adjust some of those things moving forward. There's, for example, one thing I had pointed out about their performance that I just felt like I was pointing out a fact, and to them it like really hurt their feelings. Like they were like crying about it over the weekend. And I didn't feel like I delivered that harshly necessarily, but knowing that was certainly important for me, and being able to say, oh, well, no, this is how I actually feel about you. That's that. I'm sorry you took that from that conversation, but this is how I feel. Do I want to improve this area? Yes. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in you anymore. I believe we can do this together, right? So I agree with you that a hard conversation isn't always just, you need to do X, Y, Z. I think exploring why they're dissatisfied and determining if that's something where you can re-engage together is really important.
Yeah, exactly. I love this example, actually. That was beautiful. Those are the conversations that we want to avoid because it's too personal. It's too people cry. It's the conversations that partners don't have with each other. And end up with divorce. When I did before what you did with that employee, hey, what's going on? Coming that with curiosity to find out, unattached from that agenda to try to solve the problem, just be with that person, In one time, I found that somebody is struggling with cancer. She didn't want to share with us. She had a breast cancer. And my gosh, I almost terminated her. And because she didn't feel comfortable to share it, she didn't want us to feel pity. And it becomes a project that we help her, and she continued to work in organization after that. Somebody that goes through divorce. But if we don't have that conversation, a real conversation with somebody, sometimes we don't know. We just label them as lazy or whatever and let them go of them, which could have happened very easily for me. So yeah, I think that this is what I love about leadership, is the ability to connect with people.
Agreed. And I think that's why it's important that leaders know you can't just swoop in once a month and expect to have a relationship with somebody. You have to meet with people regularly. You have to, on a at least weekly basis, be talking to individuals. I think the very best leaders are talking to their team every single day, right? Every single day, there's conversations and relationship building that's happening. And that's one of the things actually about our company. I wish we had a lot more in person. We're nationwide, so we've got people spread all over the country. And I have so much fun and just get a lot of good energy when we have team members coming in and we're all together, because you can build that relationship in a more meaningful way than you can just over Zoom. But yes, that's why it's so important. You can't expect to develop the relationship in a once a month meeting, or it's a relic of the past, I think. But in the past, these very formal quarterly, semi-annual, annual reviews, but no conversation in between. It's like, well, you're probably not actually getting the best of your people. You're not really developing a relationship there if you meet once a quarter. So I think fortunately, no one really believes that anymore. But you have to be regularly checking in on people and making sure they're doing okay.
Yeah. Jordan, I had so much fun talking to you. Really, it was a great conversation. And I'm curious if there's anything you want to bring us to a close.
Yeah. Gosh, I think I'd just say Clay Christensen had this really cool, I don't know, I think maybe it was part of a book, but a memo I read of his where he talked about having a vision of one of his leaders having a really bad day at work, like feeling unfulfilled, feeling like she wasn't challenged. And she goes home and she's snappy with her kids and not the best mother to her children. And he talks about how leadership is one of the most virtuous things you can try to work on and perfect, right? And that as good leaders have a huge impact on their people, right? And cut back to that same woman having a great day at work, feeling fulfilled, feeling like she's intellectually challenged and stimulated. And so she goes home and is excited to be home and excited to be refreshed and be with her kids and not being weighed down with all of the trial at work. And leaders can't fix everything, certainly not, but you have a really big impact on the people you lead. And you can be a source of a lot of positive momentum for them in their personal life. You can be a source for a lot of negative strain in their life. And so learning how to balance that of achieving what the organization needs to achieve while also helping this individual achieve what they want to achieve, I think is worth the lifelong pursuit you dedicate to it. It's something you can continue to learn and improve at, and I think can be very rewarding.
Yeah, totally agree. When you mentioned impact, what I thought is that as leaders, the thought of impact is their families will talk about you over dinner. What they want them to say about you, because they always talk about the CEO or their boss, right? It consumes some time in relationship. So leaders affect their employees, but the ripple effect is beyond just the impact they have on their kids the stakeholders of the stakeholders. because a bad day at work with the CEO will have a bad day for other people in their home, like their kids and their spouses. And that's actually the impact that we make as leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Dave.
Jordan, such a joy to have you. Really appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you having me.